Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the GTHub podcast. I am once again Forza R18, and the lineup this week consists of, well, much smaller because Rob is busy doing something involving drinking, and Josh is busy commentating on a sim racing league. So instead, you get to hear a new member to our podcast team, and that is a fairly new member, and that is one Darian,
Yes, hello.
our resident BMW file, who Penta might object to as being a BMW file, but there you go. Setting that up nicely.
Yeah, well,
And he's playing up his part here this week because he's seen a race I haven't actually seen. So please talk us through the VLN race that
Alright.
happened this weekend.
yeah, so the first round of VLN went underway this week. It was a pretty, not the most exciting race from the VLN, but it was fairly interesting at the beginning. We saw the anti-Porsche pretty much steaming away from the rest of the field, and the battle from second to third was just crazy. Just lines of 5 to 6, 7 GT3 cars just battling throughout the Nordschleife, going through traffic, and so yeah, it was a interesting race. The Manthey Porsche 991 was able to take the victory. Yeah, that car was pretty much the dominant car throughout the race, leading most of the laps, only not leading when it came to the pits, and some of the cars were able to give an extra lap in on their fuel stint. But, yeah, so like I said, Manthey Racing won with Kevin Estra, Earl Bamber, and Lawrence Vanthor. The 991, or the 911, sorry, winning by 51 seconds over the Audi Sports team of Marcus Windelhock and Nico Mueller. So dominant opening race from them. Porsche.
The Grello yellow green Porsche thing.
Yes.
Is it Grello?
Yep.
I think it's called Grello.
Yep, green and yellow.
Yeah.
Grello.
Yes. Second was the number 25 Audi Sport Team BWT Audi R8 LMS Marcus Winkelhock and Nico Mueller. And rounding out the overall podium was the number 4 Falcon Motorsport Porsche 911 GT3R of Klaas Bachler and Sven Mueller. And apparently this season, there you go, there's a bubblegum Audi. And there's a Falcon Porsche. Wonderful. This year, apparently, the SP9 class is split into 3 subdivisions. For some reason, I didn't actually read as to why that's happened, but it's 3. And we have the Premium and the Masters category. And the winners in the Premium class was the number 2 Gigaspeed Team Get Speed Performance Porsche 911 GT3R of Steve Jans and Merrick Bachmann. And a really cool looking Porsche. I do like that one. And the Masters category was won by the number 36 Wackenhorst Motorsport BMW M6 GT3 of Henry Wackenhorst, Rudy Adams, and Andreas Ziegler. There you go. The weird looking Total colors on that BMW. It's fixed now. I see. I was looking at it earlier. I was like, oh, the Gran Turismo BMW one. And then I was like, wait, no, that's 35. Whoops. Wrong colors. Yeah. That would have been bad.
So what's interesting about the this Porsche win? It's giving Porsche the 208th win of the VLN series overall. That's
Really?
quite impressive. 208th win VLN.
Wow. Okay, so in Porsche's amount of wins, that's probably about a third of their motorsport wins then, probably?
Yeah, just to give you an idea, the second highest win from a manufacturer is Mercedes-Benz at 51. So
Wow. All right.
quite a large difference.
Apparently, everyone has a 911 that they rally around the Nürburgring. Yes. Um. So that was the VLN race, and if you want to watch it, it's on YouTube or live stream. I can't remember. I think it's live stream. It's also on their Facebook page in English and in German. So those who want to catch up on it in this quiet weekend of non-racing. So that's there. And we transitioned from one sports car race to the other major sports car race this weekend, or this past weekend, which was the Pirelli World Challenge from COTA, with all 5 classes racing there. And some major series actually started there. Series debut of the TCR class and full GT4 specifications season in the GTS category. And in the first race was... Actually, no, I'll start with TC class. The TC class was won by Vesko Kozarov in the number 3 Reardon Racing Nissan 370Z, and he swept the weekend for touring cars. In the TCR, TCA classes, they were pretty good racing in the new TCR category for the PWC series. And we had a major debut with the Hyundai i30N TCRs, and with Brian Herta Autosport being the team to campaign their cars with the factory money. And pretty good racing between them and the real-time racing Civic Type R TCRs that debuted as well in this weekend. Apparently, in both races, it was the Brian Herta Autosport Hyundais that finished 1-2. Michael Lewis winning the first race of the weekend, and Mark Wilkins the second race. And Ryan Eversley completed the podium in both races as well. TCA was won by Eric Powell in race number 1 in his Subaru BRZ TS. And Tom O'Gorman in a Honda Civic SI won race 2. But the major races of the weekend concerned the GTS X classes and the GTX races. GTS being, like I mentioned before, GT4, and Sprint X being the hour-long races with second driver added to team lineups. And, well, there was quite some drama in the first GTS X race of the weekend. With, I think, it's one of the Panoses was a crash at the end that ended up finishing the first race of the weekend for GTS. I think was the number 50 Panos of Azano. I think it was. I seem to remember.
Yes, I believe you're right.
Yes, it was that one that finished the weekend for them, which allowed the number 55 PF Racing Ford Mustang GT4 to Jade Buford and Scott Maxwell to win the first Sprint X race of the season. And that was also the first global win and first PWC win for the Mustang GT4. It was also apparently Scott Maxwell's first win in PWC because he's never driven in a race. Other than the Continental Tire Challenge in IMSA for Ford and Multimatic. Second, rallying from a pit road penalty, or a pit lane violation for drive time, or pit, actually no, was it drive time? No, it was pit time, because it was just slightly over the mandated pit lane timing. Was the number 69 Racers Edge Motorsports Sin R1 GT4 of Harry Gottsicker, who rallied from 10th all the way to finish 2nd. And the overall podium in 3rd was the number 11 Black Dog Speed Shop Chevrolet Camaro GT4R of Tony Gaples and Michael Cooper. And the GTSA category, the number 12 Ian Lacing Racing Ginetta G55 GT4 of Drew Stavely won. Second was in an impressive showing by the debuting GTS race, the GTS Racing debut of the number 36 ST Racing BMW M4 GT4 of Aurora Strauss and Al Carter, who were both new to the series this year after being in Continental Tire Challenge for many years. And rounding out the podium was the number 88 Stephen Cameron Racing M4 GT4 of Henry Schmidt and Greg Lefouge. I think it's Lefouge. Liefooghe. Yeah, Fouge. Lefouge.
Yep,
Lefouge. And the first of the GTX races, it was entertainment as usual, and poor old K-Pax Racing got off to a bad start because they were once again damaged in the race. In their Bentley, the number 9 of Alvaro Parent having a bad beginning to his season. 2 races damaged, and then coming to the first race of the weekend, more damage to his Bentley after having just been rebuilt. So they can't catch any luck at all then. But he ended up salvaging a finish, just outside the top 5 in the final results, I believe, for GTX race 1.
That's good.
In a race that was ultimately dominated by the R Ferry Motorsports Ferrari 488 GT3 of Tony Vilander and Miguel Molina. And they won both races. The number 61 swept both GTX races of the weekend. This came after Remo Ferri, the team owner, wasn't in the country for this weekend or for the first weekend of the season in St. Pete, because sadly his father and his brother had recently passed. So it's a well-deserved win for that team, which also had to rebuild its car after heavy contact in St. So that's also a well-deserved win on that front. Second in the race was the number 2 CRP Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3 of Daniel Morad and debutant for the series, Fabian Schiller, who's a normal Blancpain GT race winner, I think, who last season was driving for HTP Motorsport, I think. And rounding out the overall podium in GTX Race 1 was the number 80 Lone Star Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3 of Mike Skeen and Scott Heckerts. The first time that their team owner hasn't actually driven that car, actually, which is quite funny. The Pro-Am winner was the number 3 K-Pax Racing Bentley Continental GT3, so they actually won something in their Bentley debut. So, of Sprint X, Rodrigo Batista and Maxime Soule, one of the Bentley boys, joining them for this Sprint X season. And the AM races for GTX were dominated by the 07 Squadra Corsa Garage Italia Ferrari 488 GT3 of Cesar Baccarella and Martin Fuentes. So there was a sweep from Ferrari in the GT classes on the top podiums on their respective ones. But in GTSX Race 2, it was a different winner because James Sofronis and Alex Welch won in their number 14 GMG Racing Audi R8 LMS GT4 in a race that I actually did not get to see because it was on quite early in the morning.
But it's not the convenient time for us West Coasters.
No, it was on at like 7 or 8 in the morning, so I was just like, sleep or watch other things? Sleep. I think I choose sleep. Yeah, that's how that worked out.
Sleep is good.
Yes, it's very good, particularly because you were watching the Grand Prix at stupid o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't exactly exciting, the Grand Prix, but more on that later. Getting back to the GTS race. the number 14 Audi, like I mentioned, had won. It was the first North American win for the car. And history was also made in that race for the Pirelli World Challenge in the fact that Samantha Tan and Aurora Strauss both led their classes at one point in the second GTS race. So that was good for the Pirelli World Challenge. Aurora Strauss actually went on to win the GTS-A category in her number 36 ST Racing BMW M4 GT4 with her teammate Al Carter. So that was actually good news for her. And second overall was the number 17 Classic BMW M4 GT4 of Justin Raphael and Stephen McAleer. And rounding out the podium overall was the number 38 ST Racing BMW M4 GT4 of Nick Whitmer and Samantha Tan. So both the ST Racing drivers showing well in the first weekend of the season. So hopefully that portends pace for them later on the season. Second in GTS-A was the number 12 of Drew Stavely and his Jannetta GT5. And rounding out the GTS-A podium was the number 45 Flying Lizard Motorsports Audi R8 LMS GT4 of Mike Hedlund. So that was another new change over the off-season with the Flying Lizards going to Audi over their Cayman GT4s. And plenty of racing was had in the GTX race, number 2, which was the like I mentioned before, sweep from our Ferrari, which had the pace all weekend long. Second was the number 80 Lone Star Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3 of Mike Skeen and Scott Heckert. Third was the number 96 Pfaff Motorsports Porsche of the points leader Scott Hargrove and Wolf Hensler. And there was some drama to be had with Hensler earlier on in the race, who I believe spun in his first stint, or when not his first stint, but in his stint behind the wheel, he ended up spinning. So Scott Hargrove had to volley back from that. And the surprise of the weekend for me was the number 31 CR3 Racing Ferrari of Jeff Siegel and Wei Lu, because for a Pro-Am car, that was pretty much in the running overall the entirety of the weekend in the hands of the AM driver. So that was actually quite surprising. Who hadn't even driven a GT3 car before this weekend, I don't think. So that was the Pirelli World Challenge summary from the Circuit of the Americas on that front. And the racing was pretty good. I don't know what you thought about it, but
I thought the racing was a lot better than compared to last year. Last year we saw a lot of track extending and penalties. This year it was very much collected, and the drivers definitely were aware of their track limits, and it led to some pretty great racing out there.
Yes, that is good racing at a very small field. And segueing into that news, we go to the news of the additions to the Long Beach round of the Pirelli World Challenge, which is that they will be adding some GTS entries to the grid. 6 to 8 cars will be added for the third round of the season for the Pirelli World Challenge, and that will be the first race for a GT-GTS combination since they split in 2014 when they had the explosion of GT3 cars. With the addition of the 6 to 8 GTS cars, the grid should be more than 20, so that's pretty good. And there's already news of one of the first GTS entries for the field in the form of Jeff Ward, who will make his PWC debut in a one-off for Black Swan Racing in a Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sport MR. So there'll be a 2-car entry for that weekend with the regular Black Swan GT3R for Tim Pappas Racing as well. That weekend.
Yeah, so I think this race with the GT and GTS combined will be pretty interesting. If you saw any of the races from 2013, 2014, when they had the combination of the GT and GTS at especially street circuits, the racing was really tight and just really interesting seeing cars, battling through traffic while, trying to gain a position out of it. So I'm really looking forward to this race. Hopefully it'll deliver like how it did in 2013 and 2014.
Well, hopefully, yes. That's the idea. It provides close racing. Maybe we'll actually have some traffic to pass, because with 13 cars, there's not many lapping to be done, or there's not much lapping to be done, really, if at all any. And there was the aforementioned Black Swan Cayman GT4 there in a nice red color. So I don't know if that's how it'll end up running with some numbers on it at the end of the day, but that is how that's working. And now we're showing the number 14 Audi for some reason. No idea why we're showing that, but we are. Segueing past that though. See here. How did I have this written down? Hang on 1 second. I lost place in my script here. VLN. Oh, right. Schubert Motorsport. Okay, that's what I was going to. We have news coming from the past weekend of the one major gap that wasn't known beforehand, and when the ADAC GT Masters had unveiled their entry list for the season, and that was the identity of the Honda NSX GT3 team. And it turns out it's a massive move for Schubert Motorsport. The longtime BMW team will be running under the banner of Honda Team Schubert Motorsports this season. And Christopher Dreisprung, and Giorgio Maggi, who are former GP3 drivers, I think, or at least Maggi is. I think it's Maggi. Giorgio Maggi, a GP3 driver. They will be running the Honda NSX GT3, and apparently also other programs with the car under consideration as well. So maybe we see that running in some VLN races and other GT3 races abroad. But it's a very lovely looking thing, and great to see a Honda NSX make it the trip overseas into Europe and to the ADAC GT Masters. But I suspect there's some Honda money going into that effort, because that's why it has Honda in the name. ADAC GT series was also testing over the past weekend, and they had some debuts of the team liveries. The Ring Police one was quite nice. The addition of the all three of the BWT cars being Audis, and about it really on the ADAC GT front. But moving past that, and also moving back to Long Beach, there was the unfortunate news that the Spirit of Daytona, oh, there's the Ring Police Porsche, yeah. There it is. If I'm mistaken, that's the one with Lucas Lure involved and some YouTuber. Penta would know. He knows the guy who's the YouTuber behind it. I don't remember his name. JP something, or JP Performance is the YouTube name. Thank you, JP Performance. He's the guy who does all the tuned Volkswagen stuff, if I'm right. I think. But I can't understand because it's all in German. So yeah, but he's behind it, and Lucas Lohr is a team owner involved, and he will be driving with an unannounced driver, I believe, because I don't remember seeing an extra entry or an extra driver entered on the entry list for that one. But it's quite a good-looking car. Also, the addition to the ADAC Masters GT Masters entry list was the Team Rosberg Lamborghini Huracan GT3. So they've switched from the DTM to run in GTs as well. Jean-Pierre Kramer is his name, I'm being told, the YouTuber. Thank you for that, Pensa. Still don't know who he is, but that's his name, apparently. But moving back to what I was saying about Long Beach and Spirited Daytona racing, their accident that took them out of the podium contention at the end of the Mobile 1 12 Hours Sebring in their Cadillac TPI VR. Sadly, we'll see them ruled out of the IMSA weekend at Long Beach because short on funds and massive crash damage leaves them little time to repair their car. So that is the second year in a row that they will be missing out there. So there will only be down to 3 Cadillac TPI VRs. That being the number 10, the number 5, and the number 31 for the season. Well, not the season, but just for Long Beach. Because there's 4 Cadillac TPI VRs, right? There's the 10, 5, 31. And yeah, there's 4. The 90 is the 4th one.
Right.
Yeah. So the blue Cadillac will be missing, sadly, at Long Beach, but there's plenty of other cars, so that's not going to miss much from the overall numbers there. And
certainly
also,
going to affect their efforts in the championship.
Well, they've fell out of Sebring, so they were behind anyway. But Tristan Vautier will do his best to gain points back because Tristan Vautier is a badass. So, what more to say about that, really?
Yeah.
The combination of Tristan Vautier and Matt McMurray is a good combination because Matt McMurray is quick, but he's young, so can't underestimate his growth. And if Vautier can stop crashing into things, he'll be quite handy. But yeah, with speed, you gotta temper it back sometimes. But it's better to be quick and temper it back than to be slow and try to speed up. So they have that on their side. Moving past sports car news, we come to IndyCar, which has seen 2 Indianapolis 500 entries being announced for the 102nd running of the Indianapolis 500 this year, and both being Hondas, and both being a 4th entry for an existing team. The first coming in the shape of the number 63 entry for Pippa Mann and Dale Coyne Racing, which will see her entry being, there it is, her entry being the Donate Life Indiana Honda for her, and this will be the 6th consecutive year she will be driving with Dale Coyne in the Indy 500. Don't blame me, that's just what's on the press release, so, you know. I didn't make the graphic, alright? Blaming me for the poor picture quality. Yeah, blame Rob, it's his fault. He's not even here. I like that idea. But she will be driving that, and as part of that activation, she will be going around giving people the word on organ donations in the guise of Justin Wilson and Brian Clausen, who did the same thing and saved multiple lives by doing so. So for those who aren't organ donors, I strongly suggest you think about being an organ donor, like they did. Who knows when it might come in handy. And the second entry for the Indianapolis 500 to be announced this weekend, or this past week, I should say, rather, was the number 7 One Cure Honda for Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, and will be driven by Jay Howard. One Cure being a animal cancer research institute at the University of Colorado, I believe. Heavily sponsoring multiple racing series this season and past season, actually. I think they were a sponsor for Danica Patrick in the Cup Series last season. Was it? Yes, it was, actually. There you go. There's a one Cure Honda in a resplendent green and black colors for their organization there. And no, this one actually will be in chrome because all the Schmidt-Peterson cars are in. That's just the team livery. They're all chromish, but the Dale Coyne car is just shiny. I don't know why it's shiny. I guess it's just the rendering why it makes it look like that. I don't know how you donate a 16th century musical instrument there, but I'm sure there's a charity that will take your 16th century musical instrument for some reason. Answering chat I am now. So that was that news, but more significant news to come out of the States was the news that, well, the already well-known news that Mazda will cease its 17-year naming rights deal with Laguna Seca Raceway on April 1st. And as a result, there will be a new name almost effective immediately. Actually, no, not almost effective immediately. It will be effective immediately. That's the Laguna Seca track will be called the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. After WeatherTech bought naming rights for 5 years for $5 million through 2022. So that is now the name for Laguna Seca, effective April 1st. That is a name change. Oh, I see the joke. Well done.
I think I'm just going to be calling it Laguna Seca now, because if I just say the whole thing, I'm just going to constantly say Mazda Raceway, Laguna Seca, and
I've actually only known it as Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, because when I started following racing at the track, that's literally when Mazda started sponsoring it, which was in 2003 is when they started sponsoring it. So I've only known it as Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca.
Yeah, it's going to be weird calling it something else now.
It is going to be very
WeatherTech
strange.
Raceway.
WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It doesn't even have the same ring to it, actually.
Yeah.
It has very strange initials, actually, because it would be WTRLS as opposed to MRLS that I've come used to over the last 17 years. It's less money than Mazda was offering them, but because because WeatherTech isn't a auto manufacturer, they are just an automotive aftermarket company of floor mats and bed liners and bumper stoppers and whatever else they sell. Any car manufacturer can come in and sponsor the track with race days and car launches and everything else. But Mazda still remains a partner in the track with track suites and corporate suites for the next 2 years, worth over $250,000. And there is a second option for another 5 years included in the deal. So that could extend it to a possible 10 years if they want to. But it's a good thing that they are involved because it gives the track much needed money to start renovating itself, because it's a fantastic place to be, but the facilities are kind of, well, if we're honest, a bit run down.
Yeah.
It really is a bit bit run down, and they're finally replacing the pedestrian bridge over the start-finish line, so that's a good thing, because that is very rickety if anyone's ever been there.
Yeah, I've been there, but I haven't been on that bridge specifically. But definitely compared to the other tracks I've been to, it isn't. I guess you would say the quality of facilities there, but still a great iconic track, and certainly will be there when IMSA makes its way out there again this year.
Well, it has WeatherTech, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship with the WeatherTech Ferrari at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Yeah. Marketing opportunities all around there for WeatherTech. So, who says America can't sponsor things at the best of them? That's all we do, really, to our best of our abilities.
Yes, that's a very key component there.
Key component of any race series in America. Doesn't have lots of sponsors on everything. No, then it should.
Yep.
That's wonderful. Yes. So that was brand new news for that, and it's welcome news for it gives them financial solvency for the next couple of years. They were also debating whether or not to have a new deal for the next 3 years for IMSA and the FIM World Superbikes, worth over $500,000. So that sounds all positive things so far from Laguna Seca, and that's what I like to hear. So good news for them. And with that done rather quickly, and I apologize if I ramble through things quite quickly, but I'm trying to make room for Josh's piece of this podcast, which is quite substantial. So, if Penta is ready with some of the audio, we can play that bit, and then once his piece is done, we will discuss our thoughts on the Australian Grand Prix, which I thought made much more sense. All the way at the end. Okay. You sure about that? You want me to just keep talking then, while I wait? Alright. Well, that gives me time to give more news then, because I was anticipating putting on a 20-minute block, but we still have lots of time. So, I will have to scrounge up the news that I canned in the first place. Well done, me. First time I'm on track and actually wrote stuff down, and it's not working out well. Well done. Yeah, okay. Let's see here. What did I actually cut out of the thing? Because I was trying to save time. I apologize for the dead air, I'm just reading something over. Oh, right, Super GT testing news that I wanted to mention, but didn't know if I could mention. So I will mention it now. And I will give Darian the article here so he can read it while I'm going along with that. There we go, that's days 1 and 2. But the Super GT testing at Fuji was happening, which is the final test for the series before they start their season in 2 weeks' time, I believe, at where are they racing actually? I believe that they start 2 weeks' time.
Yep,
yes.
April 9th.
April 8th, April 9th at Okayama. Yeah, okay, cool. So it is next weekend then that they get in the slide of things. But fastest on day 1 of the final test was the number 24 Forum Engineering Advan Nissan GTR GT500 of Mitsunori Takaboshi, and Second was the number 19 Wedsport Advan Lex LC500 of Kenta Yamashita. And only read one red flag for that happening. In GT300, it was first was the number 24, as I mentioned, of Mitsunori Takaboshi and Joao Paulo de Oliveira in number 24 Nissan GTR. Second was the number 19 Wedsport Advan LC500. Yuji Kunimoto and Kenta Yamashita, and rounding out the top three was the Waco LC500, the blue and pink one of Kazuya Oshima and Super GT debutante Felix Rosenqvist. So he finally got to get behind the wheel of his Lexus because he was on Formula E duty, the first test they were running the couple of weeks ago. So he will be someone to look forward to this Super GT season. And, well, the Lexus is probably the best car in the series, actually, right now, other than the NSXs that have suddenly found pace. The Nissans are struggling, I think, so we'll see if they can rebound from their pace last season. In GT300 on the first day was the number 55 Arda BMW M6 GT3 of Shinichi Takagi and Sean Walkinshaw. Second was the number 21 Hitotsuyama Audi LMS of Richard Lyons and Ryuichiro Tomita, and Takuro Shinohara was the third driver testing for them. And third was the D-Station Porsche of Tomonobu Fuji, testing all by his lonesome. So, very busy guy, that guy. That was day one of Super GT testing. And in the final day of testing was led by the number 19 Wedsports Advan LC500 car, Yuji Kunimoto and Kenta Yamashita on a 129.447, which apparently was, actually no, read that wrong, 128.877 for the number 19. Second was the number 6 Wacos Lexus on a 129.250, Kazuya Oshima, Felix Rosenqvist. Third was the number 1 Keeper Tom's Lexus LC500 on a 129.326 of Ryo Hirakawa and Nick Cassidy. The first Nissan was the was the blue one, because it was a Calsonic number 12 GTR of Daiki Sasaki and Jan Mardenborough in the GTR. And that was in fourth. Fifth was another GTR, the Advan GTR of Joao Paulo Oliveira, Mitsunori Takaboshi. That was the 24. That was leading day one's testing. The first Honda was the number 100 Raybrig NSX GT of Naoki Yamamoto and the full-time driver from coming out of retirement, Jensen Button, in a 129.664. And in GT300, it was the number 7 D-Station Porsche, once again driven solely by Tomonobu Fuji. The Arda BMW was second on a 136.325, and third was the number 2 Cintium Apple Lotus Savor MC, meaning MC being for mother chassis, that being a Lotus Evora body, because you can use any body style you want with the mother chassis, but it comes with a standard V8 in it. So that's the definition for the mother chassis, for those that don't know Super GT rules. But they were third overall, so that has great pace for that team. And for the lovers of the Hatsune Miku AMG, they were in fine form, and they finished 7th overall for the combined times on the day in the number 0 of Nobuteru Taniguchi and Tetsuya Karaoka. So that was 80 testing roundup for the Super GT series. That's testing there. A proper roundup and preview will be done next week when Rob can talk about more professional things than me on Super GT. Also next week will be a preview of the ADAC GT race, I believe, and Blancpain GT, because apparently all the GT races are happening all on the same weekend, because why not? There's no such thing as a schedule clash, really. Just put them all at the same time. That's that. So we will move from that into news about the WEC, and that would be the where did it go? The surprise addition to the LMP1 grid of one Pastor Maldonado, who I must admit I didn't expect to see him ever turn up in a race car ever again after the Venezuelans ran out of money to throw away. Because I certainly didn't have him on a potential bingo card of drivers to run into the WEC. Unless you did, because I didn't.
I certainly didn't.
PDVSA money there. Just, oh, it's run out. Oh, well, so unsurprisingly, Pastor has run out of things to crash into. But apparently now he'll be in the Dragon Speed number 10. Actually, no, he'll be in an LMP2 car. I thought he was in the LMP1. So even they don't have faith in him to be in an LMP1 car. Well done to them. That should be interesting. Him in an LMP2 car. I expect many crashes now.
Question is, who is he going to crash into, and when?
Well, I assume it must be Roman Rusinov. I mean, Roman Rusinov crashes into lots of people in LMP2 cars. That's just his prerogative, really. His priority is crashing into everything. Yeah, he's Crash Door Maldonado is, yes, the name, as I think who's is that Scrimpy? I think you're Scrimpy. Are you Scrimpy? Tell me if you're Scrimpy from the server, because I don't actually know your name. Chat, if you're listening. I know you're listening. Okay, you are Scrimpy. Alright. Thank you for that reply there. Well, Danny Kvyat is a Ferrari driver. He is a Ferrari reserve driver. I don't halfway expect them to place him in a GT car somewhere in some random series so they don't pay him around to look miserable and bored at the back of a garage. Although it would be interesting to see if... Yes, that's how I pronounce his name. I'm not supposed to pronounce it Kvyat? Kvyat, then? Is that how I'm supposed to pronounce it? Kvyat. Yeah, whatever. Anyway. They should stick him in a GT car just to see what he can do, really.
Yeah, well,
that would
if
be interesting.
Forza has 2 open spots in both their cars, so...
Potential Le Mans involvement, maybe? Interesting to think about. Yeah, perhaps.
But with the 6 hours of Spa coming up, they only have 2 drivers for each car, which, you know, they can run like that, but most teams have 3, so...
There's still entries open for these 6 hours, and actually, which is quite strange to me.
The race is what, like 2 weeks away?
The race is, I think, 2 weeks away. I think you're right. When is the? Oh no, because it's May 3rd to the 5th. Okay. No, they have time to announce entries. Still. But the Bike-Hollis team is missing 2 drivers, and both of the CEFC TRSM manners, not manners, that's what the M in TRSM stands for. Both of the Janettas, I meant to say, are missing 2 extra drivers, because only Charlie Robertson's in the 5 and Oliver Rowland is in the 6. They need extra people to drive. But typically, for some reason, AF Corsa cars don't run extra drivers. I don't know why they don't, but they don't employ extra people to be Ferrari GT drivers in WEC. But that's how that works out. Although, in fairness, I suppose that's because they've run out of GT drivers. I think they placed them all in customer cars. So that might be why they don't have any extra drivers.
Yeah, that could explain it.
I still feel sorry for Billy Johnson, actually, considering he only gets to do 2 races this year because he can't run an IMSA, so he's very bored sitting at home driving no Fords.
Let's give him a GT4 drive.
Or well, he can't drive an IMSA because he banned platinum drivers from being in the Conti series, so
yeah.
I don't even think he can. Actually, no, I don't think he can show up in GTS either, because they're trying to ban that next year too. So, poor man's gonna run out of Ford money, or he's gonna be a Ford factory driver driving no Fords. Funny how that works out. Interestingly, though, Tony Kanaan is included in the Spa lineup prior to Le Mans, alongside Andy Prio and Harry Ticknell. So that's interesting. I don't think Tony Kanaan's ever been to Spa either. Actually, has he? No, he hasn't, because he's never raced any Formula car there. So,
I'm sure that'll be an interesting race for him then.
Let's see here. Oh, both the AF courses and the Porsche 911 RSRs have 2 drivers. That's interesting. So both the Ferraris and the Porsches are down to 2 by choice. One of the Proton cars, the Dempsey Proton car, is missing. The 77 doesn't have a driver. Khalid Al-Kabesi has joined Giorgio Rodi and Matteo Carioli in the 88, so that's filled. Yeah, there's not that many blank spaces left to be filled. One of the SMP Racing BR1s is missing a driver, though, so I wonder who that could be. Suspect another Russian. Because that's all they have, apparently, in their lineup is Russians other than Stefan Serezin, being the lone non-Russian in that lineup.
Alright, well, should we get into F1 maybe?
I don't know. I'm at the mercy of F1, so, you know, I'm at the. You said F1, so I said F1. What I meant to say was I'm at the mercy of Penta's audio clip here. So it is a bit chunky, so I need to play it, but I can't play it because I don't have the OBS. So if Penta would be so gracious to play it now, we could hear Josh's thoughts on the Grand Prix and anything else that's on his mind, and then we could have our thoughts on the Grand Prix. And then we could discuss calendars at the end of the show. And I think we've built up this part long enough, really. But he just has to give me confirmation as to when he's gonna play it. Alright, well, Penta's being stubborn, so, I guess we'll talk about F1 first, and then he'll play the clip from Josh. But, yeah, what did you think about the Grand Prix there, Darian?
Well, I'm not typically I don't typically watch Formula One, but I happened to watch this race to see all the changes, and overall, I thought the race wasn't all too exciting, but it was still a good race. Saw the incident with the Haas gun, the air guns, not working, costing them the race.
On both cars. Tragically, it seems they invested in their NASCAR pit crew.
Yeah, that was
tragic.
Yeah, definitely changed the race. Putting the Ferrari ahead of the pretty dominant Mercedes up until that point. They had the full course yellow safety car.
It wasn't actually a safety car. It was a virtual because I can speak English. I wasn't saying virtual safety car. No, it was a virtual safety car, meaning cars could play it, or cars could be on track, and if you were coming out of the pits, because it was a virtual safety car, not an actual safety car, there wasn't a set speed limit to be to. So as long as you were coming out of the pit lane, you could gas it and get ahead, which is what was happening with Vettel when he came into the pits. Hamilton was behind, so he was already on his limiter, so to speak, because he was under virtual safety car speeds. So when Vettel came out, he could just go flat out until he got to the end of the pit lane cutoff area, and then he could merge. And Hamilton had to let him in, so that was how he ended up gapping him under the caution, because that's how Max Verstappen lost the place to Fernando Alonso in the end. And on the same token, the thing that made me laugh though was how the Sky commentators, and anyone who knows the names, I don't know their names, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Martin Brundle, David Croft, and someone else? Can't remember who they were. Nico Rosberg was part of the Sky coverage this season. But us Americans got the coverage, and well, I don't know what to think about it, really. ESPN does a stand-up job about giving us subpar coverage about everything, really. So, yeah.
Throwing in random commercials during the action.
First off, they made the mistake of their first televised coverage when it wasn't on ESPN3, which is the app, for Free Practice 1 and Free Practice 2. For Free Practice 3, it was televised on TV. They mistakenly put in the wrong time when they were going to show it live on TV. So you ended up watching the wrong program an hour ahead of time, which was ridiculous. So that Free Practice 3 was late by an hour. That wasn't broadcast properly. Qualifying, they had technical difficulties with that as well. And they had no audio for that. When they actually came to the race itself, they had a pre-race that wasn't really announced beforehand. And that took people off guard. But it wasn't really a pre-race because there was just video with no audio, so there was no context to what we were looking at. So they kind of had to go and show another program while we were staring at nothing with no audio. And when they finally did come back with actual audio for the pre-race, there were 5 minutes of interviews that mostly consisted of, I think, talking to Christian Horner. I think that was it, and the national anthem of Australia. That was the pre-race show that they gave us. You're just going, all right,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. Nothing to set up the race with no context whatsoever than that. And actually, in the race itself was a hilarious blooper of on-screen graphics that consisted of last name driver battling last name driver on lap 38 of 58.
Yes.
That was.
I saw that. And
I don't even know what driver they were, what drivers they were talking about. I suspect it was, judging from the picture, they were talking about Kimi Räikkönen and I think Daniel Ricciardo. I think that's what they were trying to say, but even the on-screen graphics were wrong because it says the 14 and the 3, so I don't know who they were trying to talk about.
yeah, it's certainly a mistake from them. That I also laughed at that when I saw that, just thinking like, what are we watching and what are they talking about? Whose last name? Why are the two of them?
Last name here and last name here. You know, the up-and-coming driver to rival the TBAs and TBCs of this world. Very busy. Last name.
Yes, yes.
Last name, of course, is the popular cousin to TBC. It's that well-known guy. I don't know. I'm just kind of bothered by the crap coverage we've gotten with ESPN so far. It's not a very good omen that ESPN, this is the coverage we get from their F1 thing, in the same day that, or not in the same day, but in the same week that they lost their IndyCar coverage to NBC, which I found quite ironic, actually. But yeah, there's a reason why IndyCar got fed up with them too. We don't no longer have to hear Eddie Cheever and Scott Goodyear say stupid nonsense all the time. But that's a different story altogether. I don't know. The Haas guys had running 4th and 5th, running around perfectly fine, doing what we expected them to do before their NASCAR pit guns got in the way and they retired. Sebastian Vettel won the race, and Lewis Hamilton finished second, coasting, turning his engine down, and then complained that he was turning his engine down because he had to save it for the end of the season, because there's only 3 there's only 3 engines allowed, or not engines, power units allowed this season for some reason. Because, 5 power units wasn't strangely trying to conserve enough. We cut that by 2. Because logic? I don't know why. Yeah, complains about passing and action in said series, and then makes people treat their cars more carefully, but then complains about passing. I don't know the logic in that myself, but welcome to Formula One.
Yeah, the going to the end when Hamilton was chasing down Vettel, I thought at that point it was getting interesting. Hamilton closing in, saying that he was faster early on in the race, and as he was catching Vettel, he was also setting his fastest lap times of the race, slowly catching him until he did run wide and brought what I think was a less than a second gap to pretty much almost 3 seconds. And he tried to claw his way back from there, going to roughly 2 seconds, and that's when he just turned down the engine and let Vettel drive away with it pretty much.
Yeah, well, it was close still to the end, even when he was coasting off. Hamilton turned the engine down, and
it was definitely
catching him.
Yeah, not at the rate that he was before.
No.
So I'm pretty sure at that point Hamilton was just like you were saying, just let down, just to save the engine for the rest of the season, and just turned off the attack.
Yep, turned off the attack with about, I think, 6 laps to go, something like that. Actually, probably
Yeah.
three, 4 to go. Actually, is when he turned it down and backed it up. He actually backed up so far. He ended up running, almost getting caught by Kimi Raikkonen and Daniel Ricciardo at the end. Actually, that's how far he had turned it down.
Yeah.
Which would have been quite a funny way to lose a podium position. All right, well, I've lost the race. I'm turning the engine down. Oh, it seems I've been caught by the other Ferrari at the Red Bull at the end of the race. Oops.
My bad.
My bad. Yeah, exactly. That would have been a hilarious way to lose the podium.
Yeah. Another interesting thing I saw during the race was Verstappen was pretty loose throughout the race. Saw him getting pretty sideways in corner exit. We saw him do a complete 360 out of one of the turns, losing him some positions.
Well, that was, I think, the very first corner. Was when he spun it around. I believe that's when he spun anyway. Because that was allowed. I don't think it was Romain Grosjean. I think it was. Was it Romain Grosjean? I think it was Romain Grosjean. Or Cameron Magnussen. It was one of the Haas's that spun it around and allowed them to get by before they had their issues. But no, Verstappen was not the best Red Bull of the weekend. That was Daniel Ricciardo, who actually came back from a grid penalty to do well to just finish off the podium in 4th. So he's got the upper hand at the team in the moment. And oh, okay. Apparently Couch is saying he had damage to his car. I didn't actually see that because, well, we didn't get to see much of anything thanks to ESPN. But thank you for that. I did not know that one.
Well, they did discuss the floor damage. I think it was before qualifying. They discussed it a little bit, but they never really said if it was fixed or not. So.
Oh, I didn't even know he had floor damage before the race. That's news to me as well. I didn't know they had damaged. How did he damage this floor? What did he run over?
I'm not sure if he ran over something or if it just happened to break while during practice or something like that. Again, ESPN
okay, that would make sense.
Not delivering, giving as much information as possible, but that's how it goes.
It would appear so. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I didn't know about that. All right, well, that was our take on the Australian Grand Prix. They race again in 2 weeks' time. Is it 2 weeks' time? As I consult my calendar. Hang on. Yes. Weeks' time. In 2 weeks' time at the Bahrain International Circuit for the Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix. So yes, they go to the desert for round 2 under the lights. And Mercedes will probably win that, in which Josh will probably preview that Mercedes won't win because Josh is contrary to everything. So, yeah. Excuse me.
Instead, I think we'll be playing. Is it Josh's clip, right?
I think we can play this clip now because we're at the end of the show. So I'd prefer Penta to play the clip now. He just has to tell me. Oh, okay.
Hello everyone and welcome to the GTHub podcast. As I have a pretty sore throat, as you can hear. But anyway, I'm not actually in the podcast today. This is a pre-recorded piece, which is going to be played, I think, at the start, which is why I introduced it. If not, then that probably just sounds a little bit weird and out of place. But oh well, at least I'll know for future weeks. Go away, silly cough. Right. So the reason I'm doing this is because I still want to be part of this this podcast, but I'm doing a commentary at the same time, which means that I can't be there. So I'm doing this instead. Now, of course, one of the things that was a huge talking point around racing at the weekend was the Formula One Australian Grand Prix. We previewed it a bit in the last show, and I predicted to Forza and to any of you that heard it that Sebastian Vettel would win the race. Did I not? Did I not? I did. Now, I wasn't entirely sure that it was going to be quite like that, but I did think that it was going to be all done in the race, because of course Hamilton tends to be the quickest in qualifying. I mean, we've heard he's qualified pole in Melbourne, I think it's 7 times now, which is a record for the circuit. So of course we all knew he was going to be the quickest driver, but Vettel always seems to pull it off in the race. We've seen that every time that he's raced there for Ferrari. I mean, for example, last year he won the race for Ferrari after I don't think he qualified on pole. 2016 very nearly won the race, probably could have done had the team not made a bad strategy call. So you see, I knew that Vettel would be strong at the Australian Grand Prix. I wasn't quite prepared for how he'd win it. Now, for those of you who saw the race, you would have seen that Hamilton pitted the car ahead of Sebastian Vettel, of course, and then at the end of the pit stages, he was behind him. Now, the reason for that, if you analyse the race, was that Sebastian Vettel pitted under virtual safety car. Now, this is allowed within the regulations. Many people have been calling for it to not be allowed within the regulations, especially after the 2016 USA Grand Prix, if you can remember that, because you can gain so much of an advantage through that, and it has caught people out in the past. Now, of course, to explain this, it's very much a case of the actual speed that the cars are going on track relative to in the pits. So the pit lane speed limiter is always fixed. That is always a fixed speed. There is a speed limit in the pits. They have to keep to that. I'm not sure entirely what it is at Australia. I think it's something like 60 miles per hour. But they have to keep to that certain speed. On track, of course, there is normally not a speed limit, because let's face it, it's Formula One. It would be weird if there was a speed limit. But in the pits, of course, there always is one. And under virtual safety car, there's one on the track as well. And that means, of course, that when Hamilton pitted, Vettel was still going full racing speed. And when Vettel pitted, Hamilton was not going full racing speed. This all seems very, very obvious. But of course, this is all a case of very good strategy from the Ferrari guys. Quite lucky as well. I mean, it was quite lucky that the time when they were going to pit, the virtual safety car came out anyway. And you have to admit that was a real factor, luck, in their race victory. But I don't like people who say that, or I don't like it when people say, "Oh, as I do something very weird with what you just saw on screen there." Never mind that. But I don't like it when people say that a race is completely luck, like when a race is won just by luck, because that was not the case and never is. You have to still be there, ready for these situations to arise, and ready to capitalize on these situations, and that is what Vettel was. So I think it was a good victory from Vettel. Yes, slightly fortunate, but that just adds to the excitement of the racing, I suppose. If it was going to be that the quickest driver and quickest car won every single race, like some people seem to think that Formula One is, then Hamilton would win every race. That would be it. There would be no excitement. They would finish in the same order every time. So I absolutely welcome the different factors of unpredictability that we have in motorsport. And I keep saying that even though Formula One is seen as the most predictable racing series, it really isn't. It's not predictable in the slightest. I mean, after qualifying, when Hamilton put his car 7/10 ahead, I thought that was it. I thought he was going to be completely dominant. And maybe he will be for the majority of the season. Who knows? We can't really foresee that at this point of in time. Hamilton is the obvious favourite. But if things like this can happen once, they can happen again. As a more general review of the race, of course, we had a couple of drivers on the grid with issues. We had Daniel Ricciardo with a 3-place grid penalty. He started from, I think, 8th position when he should have been 5th. And Valtteri Bottas, of course, had an accident in qualifying and ended up starting not 10th on the grid like he would have qualified, but 15th because he also had a penalty due to a gearbox change, I believe, caused by the accident. Hamilton took pole position ahead of Kimi Räikkönen. Great to see Räikkönen out-qualifying Sebastian Vettel. That's always really good to see. I'm one of the people who still believes that Räikkönen has a lot of potential in him and a lot of pace left in him, and he is still one of the top guys. And if Ferrari weren't so biased towards one driver, Räikkönen could still win races. But anyway, Räikkönen pulling a flyer out of the bag and qualifying ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Then it was Max Verstappen in his Red Bull, followed by the two Haas drivers. Now, Haas was a real surprise in this weekend for two completely opposite reasons. Now, of course, in qualifying, that was because they were so quick. 5th and 6th on the grid. That's the place normally reserved for the second Red Bull or Ferrari or Mercedes. And yet it was taken up by the two Haas drivers. It wasn't just that one of them pulled a blistering lap out of the bag. It was that both of them were absolutely on it. Haas is a real contender this year. They are going to score podiums. They are going to really contend for 4th place in the championship. I mean, if we have another race like Azerbaijan last year, they could get a win. So there is real hype around the Haas car this year. And with all of those Ferrari parts on them as well, they're a really strong package. However, their team very much let them down. You have to say that in the race. Of course, for those of you who didn't see the race, within 2 laps of each other, the two Haas cars pitted, and both of them exited the pits without a wheel attached properly. Now, for one of them, it was the rear left, and for the other, it was the front left. And that's pretty bizarre, because surely, if you do identify a fault with the wheel gun, like they said, then you probably check the wheel guns or replace them or something like that. Maybe they did with the rear left because it was the rear left first, but then the front left failed as well. So it was just really weird. And I don't suspect that it was entirely coincidental, because the chance of that happening so sort of close together to just one team is a bit bizarre, really. And then if you overlook the fact that it could have just been coincidence, you never send a car out in an unsafe condition. It's quite easy not to. Just take a little bit of time to actually check the pits have been completed successfully. If the mechanic hasn't signalled to say that the car can go, don't let it go. And to make the same mistake 2 laps or within 2 laps of each other, I mean, it's just really rather silly from the Haas guys there, and it cost them a very good result, a possible 4th and 5th position. So that was a big shame, but great to see Romain Grosjean going back to his team and spurring them on, comforting them after their sad defeat. Very good sportsmanship from Romain there. But anyway, terrible race for the Haas guys. It was also a pretty dismal race for Max Verstappen. Now, Verstappen, we saw him at the start. He had a bad getaway and actually dropped behind Kevin Magnussen. And then, in chasing him, had a big spin. And from then on, he was really, really hampered in the race. he was moving about all over the tail of Max Verstappen's car ahead for many laps prior. It had a couple of big slides. I reckon that Red Bull is struggling in the turbulent air. Now, I was a bit surprised after all of that to see Daniel Ricciardo demote the Renault guy. I think it was Hulkenberg. So sort of easily. I mean, he caught him and passed him. It was quite straightforward. Apart from the fact Hulkenberg did put up a real battle as they were side by side, but it didn't appear that Ricciardo was struggling in the turbulent air or anything like that. But Verstappen really was, and that was interesting to see. It was just a bit of a poor performance from Max, actually, and he ended up sixth, dropping behind his teammate, who of course had that penalty, and actually dropping behind Fernando Alonso, putting in a brilliant show in the McLaren Renault. The first time, of course, we've seen the McLaren Renault pairing in Formula One, and they had a brilliant start to the season. One of my pre-season predictions was that the McLaren Renault is going to get a podium at some point. Judging by that performance, I really think they will do. So that's good to see, and well deserved for Fernando Alonso. I can't wait for them to get even better results than that. They will need a bit of luck for it, but doesn't everyone? So yeah, Fernando Alonso, good result there. Looking further down the order, it was a poor performance from Valtteri Bottas as well, but not entirely by his own fault. It was simply that he couldn't really make up the places as quickly as he was expected to. Pulled a couple of good overtakes on Van Dorn and the two Force Indias, but he was really sort of not there, and I reckon that is because the cars are so much faster this year. It means that the straights are shorter, and of course the turbulent air is increased, and therefore it is harder to follow the cars ahead, and Bottas just wasn't really able to make up much ground. But again, I like that. It adds an extra level of unpredictability, not just into the races, but into the championship as well. It means that all it takes is for one dodgy qualifying session for any of these guys, and they're on the backhand. So that's going to be a very interesting story to follow as the season progresses. The Force Indias, no points for either of them. Now that was interesting, seeing as last year, of course, they came 4th position in the Constructors' Championship by quite considerable margin as well. I mean, if either of their drivers had just been driving in the team on their own, then they still would have claimed 4th in the Constructors' Championship. They were very much in a class of their own. It was like there were 3 classes in F1 last year, and Force India was the only entrant into Class 2. So, yeah, the Force India guys did a great job last year, but this year it appears their car is really struggling for performance. I mean, they qualified... I don't think either of them reached Q3. No, they didn't. They qualified 13th and 15th, finished 11th and 12th. So, still a lot of time to be gained for Force India, and none of us were really expecting them to be this far down. Also out of the points, Charles Leclerc, Lance Stroll, Brendan Hartley, the drivers we'd expect to kind of be down there. The Sauber, obviously not a point-scoring car just yet. Of course, we had 2 retirements from the 2 Haas's. Pierre Gasly, he had an engine issue. Marcus Ericsson, hydraulics. Sergei Sorokin, brakes. So we had Sorokin out. Kevin, Kev out. Roman, or Grosjean, Grosjean. All of those jokes. And oh yeah, and Eric's on, Eric's off, of course. Can't really think of one of those for Gasly, but anyway, that was the race order. So at the end of that, of course, Sebastian Vettel leads the Drivers' Championship with 25 points over Lewis Hamilton's 18, and then it's Kimi Raikkonen, Daniel Ricciardo, and Fernando Alonso. But it is Ferrari topping the Constructors' Championship for the first time, I think, since 2010, possibly. In fact, I don't even know if they did then. That rings a bell. So Ferrari having a great time at the top of the order for the first time in a very long time, at least. Mercedes in second position almost have half the points of Ferrari after Bottas struggled to make his way through the field. Red Bull, third place, 20 points, so half the points of Ferrari at the top. And then McLaren in fourth. Great showing from them. And Renault in fifth. Interestingly, every team that got into the points-paying positions got into it with both of their drivers. So it's only 5 teams that scored points today, and still plenty of time to be gained for the other 5 for the remainder of the season. The equal longest race season in Formula One history is on the cards for us this year, with the next round at Bahrain in 2 weeks' time, April the 8th, and a lot of people, interestingly, tipping it to be quite a dull race, as we're used to seeing from Bahrain, I'm afraid to say. But actually, I reckon it'll be a rather good one, because if you look at the Bahrain circuit layout, we have 4 long straights, and long straights are really what these cars need to get the overtakes done. People were complaining about a lack of overtakes at Australia, but in my own opinion, I think there was just the right amount of battling. I didn't really see the problem with a lack of overtakes or anything like that, because the battles we did get were exciting. I mean, Ricciardo versus Hulkenberg, that was exciting. We had Alonso chasing down Sainz, and then Sainz going off through the gravel. We had an intense fight for the front of the order, with Hamilton chasing Vettel and then making an error. Yeah, there weren't the overtakes that we're often used to seeing, but you don't need overtakes necessarily. They're very much just, I mean, if you have a close battle but with no overtakes, it is still just as tense, probably even more tense than someone working their way through the order and making overtake after overtake. It's a very different story. But anyway, that was my review of the 2018 Australian Grand Prix. I didn't really see much else racing over the weekend, particularly because there wasn't any, except for a sim race that I was in. That was good. Got my team's best result yet, so that went very well. Me and my teammate in a 6-hour endurance race, so that was a lot of fun. Sim racing Malta, simply because I can slot in a bit of sim racing now that the others don't have any chance to interrupt me. That was interesting, as championship leader Hani Al Sabdi had a lack of practice going into this round, and ended up losing out to Kevin Siggy for the lead of the race. Siggy moves up to second in the championship there. However, that wasn't after Al Sabdi had claimed pole position by 0.3 of a second, after not having driven the car at that track before official practice. So while the other drivers have been practicing for weeks, Al Sabdi just turned up, stuck it on pole, and thought, yeah, what are you going to do about it? So amazing performance there. He still tops the Drivers' Championship after finishing second. The next round of that, we have to wait over a month, actually, before we go to... Oh, where's the next round of that? I'll have to check the calendar briefly. I think it's Mugello. Yeah, it is. And that is on the 18th of May. Make sure you tune in for that. That, of course, being the Sim Racing Malta Porsche 911 GT3 Cup. The championship, of course, sponsored by Porsche itself. Very high-profile championship. And you'll probably recognise the voice of the commentator if you do decide to tune in. But I'm going to end my little segment of the podcast there and leave it to your other hosts, Forza R18 and whoever else has turned up. So I will see you next week, where I will be back live.
And we are back with the ending part of our show, and we are back with and you are posting a wall of text on the Discord. Well done. What does all that mean to me?
That is the races coming up this week.
My God. Okay. Hang on, let me just read that for a second. While I do that, any thoughts on what Josh has said, other than gloating about how he was correct about Sebastian Vettel winning the Grand Prix.
Well, he pretty much summed it up pretty well. Exactly what happened in the race, and an interesting take on what he predicts for the next race. Just did a pretty good job summing up what was going to happen, what he thinks will happen, and then plugging in his sim racing, of course.
Well, he is the resident sim racing commentator and F1 expert, so-called F1 expert. So yeah, that's what he does in the podcast. But of course, Josh was correct, and I was wrong about Hamilton not winning. But I was only barely wrong. He almost won. He was undone by a virtual safety car, but he would have won. It doesn't matter because in Bahrain, Hamilton will win because Bottas won't win. He'll finish second or third, or at least score points, but he won't win. Yeah, his insight was wonderful and valued. So that was the first experiment with that. And we look forward to his thoughts live next week. Because he switches off and on, I believe. So he will be here live next week. And with that, we will transition into upcoming events. And there's no racing happening here in the States because Easter weekend. So that's American calendar sorted there.
Yep, no race day for that. You got to celebrate Easter, of course.
Yes. So, well, you don't really, but you do. Let's see here. BRDC F3 from Alton. Okay, so basically British GT and BRDC F3 from Alton Park. We also have lots of series I've never heard of in South America. There is no area. Yep, that's South American series I've never heard of. TC2000, okay, I've heard of that one. We have TCR Asia from Sepang, TCR UK from Silverstone. Apparently they're all racing all sorts of things across Britain this weekend.
They do have Trans Am Port Atlanta.
Oh, so someone's racing on the Easter weekend then. Alright. I didn't know that. Road Atlanta, Trans Am. Motor America from Road Atlanta as well. Okay. We have Drifting, and we have from Nagaro French GT and French F4. And yes, mainly consisting of the main series are British GT and British Superbikes. That's basically the lineup that we have going on there. And not streamed though. Which one are you referring to? Which ones aren't streamed? I don't know. I think British GT should be streamed on the GT World website. At least they were last year, unless that's not continuing again. Because if that's the case, then I cannot. Oh, Trans Am? Yeah, that's not streamed. I think they televise that package first, and then it's on YouTube a week after it's on TV, I think.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
But all the rest of them are streamed, I think. Apart from
TCR is usually streamed.
TCR UK. Now that's not a replacement for BTCC, is it?
I would think not.
Because I must admit I've known nothing about this new TCR series that's racing in the UK. Oh wait, no. It's on, not conjunction, but it's separate. Okay, cool. Well, that is our show for this week, and apologize for some of the stopgaps, but we are working some things out. So hope you all enjoyed it, and we will talk to you next week with a preview show, mainly consisting of Super GT and Blancpain GT Sprint Cup races. So with that, goodbye.